Hi, this is our first time. Be gentle with us.
Yeah, water would be nice.
So, sometimes it feels like this when starting in a new project. You start with enthusiasm that is soon crushed down with uncertainty and anxiety. We started thinking that is there anything we as consultants could be doing so that the one coming after us wouldn't feel the same? Maybe make the customer happier in the process too. My name is Katarina Partti.
And I'm Jenna Lindroos. We both have been working in consulting test automation and with robot framework for about 3+ years now. We have experience working both in public and private sector projects, and I think the best thing about our work is the variation where you can end up and your work doesn't get easily boring. What comes to testing and test automation, they both give for us enough challenges and chance to learn new things. We started our careers in Test Automation Academy and now we work in Gofore. Projects where we work can vary on a large scale, and it is important to us to think what we leave behind for the person after us and for the client.
So, as consultants, we've seen some projects that have felt more successful and others that have not. We wanted to know if other consultants felt the same as us about different kinds of projects. So, we talked with some of our colleagues and conducted a small survey among them. Initially, we thought that we'd get some kind of hands-on ideas how to make the scripts better. But actually, these kind of details were not important at all in determining whether a project felt good or bad. Anyway, our main idea was to approach test automation from a bit different perspective and hopefully give some food for thought. So in general, the colleagues that we talked to and answered our survey felt that smaller projects seemed to be more successful than larger ones. And on the other hand, we personally have experience with larger projects that have been very pleasant to work in. Obviously, the size of the project doesn't make it good or bad by itself, but there are a few aspects that tend to get more challenging as the project grows bigger. As we were talking to our colleagues, we noticed that certain topics were mentioned many times. We wanted to talk about a few of them from a consultant perspective. So the aspects were tools, documentation, common practices, and communication.
So when we talk about tools, it's easy to think only about the tools that the automation developer uses. But even to use them or do testing efficiently, you need the test environment and test data first. We found out that our colleagues like to work on updated tools, and it can easily get unpleasant to work with old version tools and in a work environment that doesn't support doing your job well. In successful projects, tools were updated, the test environment stable enough, and there was test data available. Consultants felt they were learning new things, and the work itself supported their career development. To mention in this tool topic why we like to use robot framework as one of our main tools is that it's easy to start to use, and if you are in a situation where your test environment isn't really there yet, you can, for example, still do low-level smoke tests and start expanding the tests as the environment gets more features. Plus, you can easily find libraries for your needs or create new ones by yourself, so it's versatile.
So with documentation, we mean the documentation of the test scripts and everything directly related to the technical aspects of the testing. Usually documentation feels really important when you start in a new project and you know nothing about it, or when the project grows so big you can't remember everything by heart. I think all of our colleagues that we talked to mentioned documentation in their worst experiences in projects. If there is too much documentation, it can get outdated as nobody has time to go through all of it to update it. Also, it can be hard to find if it's scattered in many places. Based on our experiences, it would seem that generally the biggest problem is just bad or outdated or lacking documentation. I would like to believe that in general it is possible to make scripts so self-explanatory that you don't need very extensive documentation. However, that's not unfortunately always the case. But my personal choice would be to keep the documentation as close to the scripts as possible, meaning that like if I have complicated keywords, I write the documentation in the keywords, not in README, for example. It is tempting to comment on the scripts also, but there is this danger in doing so, as if you make changes in the scripts, then you might forget the comments, and the comments get outdated or misleading.
So, to even do something together in projects, there is need for common practices. And it's emphasized in bigger projects where there are a lot of people in different roles. But if you have them also in small team, then you can scale up easily. Also, if any of the team members change, the team can still function as everybody has the same style of doing things. If people don't work by the same rules or common practices, they don't necessarily make a very good team. There doesn't need to be too many rules, but even some clearly defined expectations help decrease confusion and build a work environment where everyone can work towards common goals without second guessing themselves at every turn. One way to look at common practices is dividing them into technical and cultural common practices. By technical practices, we mean that they are, for example, what tools you use, which versions, how, and the expected level of documentation, which was mentioned earlier. Also, you don't have to use too much time to think about the scripting style if you use tools like RoboCop or RobotID with Robot Framework. Then there are the cultural practices. Who to contact when you have something to ask? What is the policy on dailies, retros, sprints, etc.? For example, half of the team can't be agile and other half waterfall. Also, the importance of agreeing things together is emphasized if there is people from different companies working together in the same project. The main thing about common practices is that they are something that everyone agrees to. The key to a successful teamwork is communication.
There are different levels of communication. All of them are equally important. You need to be able to vocalize your expectations and the need for personal development with your manager. In the project, the communication within the team and with the client is essential. I've been working on projects with continuous development. So with the team, I mean the product owners, test managers, software developers, testers, and others involved in the development. As a consultant, you have to balance between the customers and the team's expectations. To have realistic expectations, the consultant needs to think what is even possible in that specific project situation. It's easier to do your work correctly if you're on the same page about what you're doing. The easiest way to make the customer happy is to communicate on what you're doing and by showing your expertise. If you're asked to do something you don't agree with, you need to tell. Communicating clearly and politely on negative matters is hard but essential. Usually it leads to less stress for everyone, as everyone knows what they're doing and why. However, sometimes the problems are too big to be solved by an individual. If you're in a project and you notice your own well-being being compromised, it's okay to request a change of the project.
So, to sum up the things we just mentioned, for example, when you start a new project, be brave, take charge of your own career development, and ask questions. Document the most important parts and think about how to make the job easier for your successor. Even if what you are doing feels self-explanatory for you, it might not be to the next one after you. Ease your work if possible and save some time. For example, automate your technical rules with tools available. The importance of communication seemed to pop up many times when we talk with our colleagues in different aspects. People will know better what is happening and what kind of expectations the client and the team have when communication works. It's clear that the lack of communication slows everyone down. Anyone can sometimes find themselves in an unpleasant project when you work as a consultant. It might not be easy to change that specific situation, but at least we can always try first discussing it with our managers. Point is not to stay alone with the situation. Thank you for listening us.
Thank you.